Hello, boys and girls, moms and dads, grandmas, grandpas, cats and dogs, and peanut butter sandwiches at home. It's Teacher Paul here, coming at you with video number 3 on the FreeCodeCamp responsive web design course. Today we're going to be building project number 3. Learn CSS colors by building a set of colored markers. Now, just to remind you guys, we've already done project number 1, building a cat photo app, and project number 2, building a cafe menu. You can see both of those projects on my code pen over here in my FreeCodeCamp responsive web design collection. So I have the project 1 cat photo app here and project 2 cafe menu here. Project 2 was super fun. But today we're going to be starting project number 3, which is a big one. It has 94 different steps. So I expect it's going to take us quite some time. Let's see how we get on anyway. And we're going to start by reading the text up here. Selecting the correct colors for your web page can improve the aesthetic appeal to your readers. In this course, you'll build a set of colored markers. You'll learn different ways to set color values and how to pair colors with each other. So how to pair colors together. Let's go into number 1 here. Here's what we're going to be making. Just a simple set of 3 colored markers. I can see some shadow, some color gradients, maybe some borders with different divs. We'll have to look into it to see how it's made. Step number 1. As you've seen in previous projects, web pages should start with a doc type HTML declaration followed by an HTML element. Add a doc type HTML declaration at the top and an element after that. Now, I remember to make the doc type declaration, I need to open my brackets, type doc type, then HTML, like that. But as coders, sometimes it's easy for us to forget different things. So that's why I'm going to recommend to you guys another website. This is W3 Schools. And if there's ever anything you forget in HTML, you can come here, or CSS, in fact, or JavaScript, or Python, or SQL, or any kind of programming language at all. You can come here to try and find the information you need. For example, if I want to know how to declare doc type, I can search doc type and see what comes up. And so here, the first result, HTML doc type declaration, that's what I want. So I can see in here an example of the doc type declaration. So I could just copy that and bring it back here to my FreeCodeCamp window. Because we're getting further into the course now, they're not going to hold our hands as much. So I have my doc type declaration, and now I want to add my HTML element. And I'm going to close that out as well and make sure that my spacing is correct. Press Control and Enter to test my code. And they're happy with that. Wonderful. Now for step 2. Nest a head body within HTML. And after the head, add a body. Okay, so we're inside our HTML. So I'm going to add my head. I'm going to close my head. And then I'm going to add my body. And I'm going to close my body. There we go. Now we want these to be nested. So that means we're going to add some space there, but so they are inside the HTML like that. Excellent. Step number 2 completed. Added the head and the body. Step 3. Remember that the title element gives search engines extra information about the page. It also tells browsers what text to display in the title bar when the page is open. For example, yes, you can see up here, it says learn CSS colors by building a set of colored markers, step 3. Where does it get this information from? Well, it gets it from the head. We might be able to see it here if we press F12, go into our head, and let's see if we can find where is the title link. Where is the title element? So, inside our head, and here we go, we have a title. And you can see there's the title text in the code for this page, which is showing up here in top of the tag. Cool. I'll exit my developer view. Inside here, we're going to add a title, and we're going to write colored markers. And then I'm going to close my title off. Nice and simple. Control and Enter to check, and we're happy to go. Step 4. Tell browsers how to encode characters on your page. Set the charset to UTF-8. UTF-8 is a universal character set that uses every character from all human languages. Inside the head element, put a meta with the attribute charset, yet set to UTF-8. Meta elements are self-closing. So under our title here, we add a meta. Then we say charset equals, start our inverted commas, UTF-8, and close that off. And we should be ready then. Excellent. Number 5. Finally, add a viewport meta tag to make sure your page looks the same on all devices. Nest a self-closing meta element inside the head. Give it a name attribute set to viewport and a content attribute set to width equals device width, initial scale equals 1.0. So this means, this is what we were talking about in the last one. We're checking how big is the screen that people are looking at our website on. Name equals, and I'm going to write viewport. Then I'm going to have content equals width equals device dash width, comma, initial dash scale equals 1.0, and close my meta line there. Wonderful. Step 5 complete. Number 6. Now you're ready to add some content to the page. So finally we can get away from this empty white page. So inside the body, we're going to add a H1 element, and we're going to write inside there CSS color markers. I'm going to close my H1, Control and Enter. Very simple. In this project, we're going to use an external CSS file. We've created the file for you, but before you can do it, you need to link it. So in the head, we need to have a link with the relationship style sheet, and type text CSS and a href, which is styles.css. I'm going to come here into my head under the title. I'm going to write open a link attribute or a link element. I'm going to give it the relationship equals style sheet. Next, I'm going to say type equals, and the type is going to be text/CSS. And then finally, we add a href equals, and for the href, we're going to write styles.css. Close out my link tag there and press Control and Enter to check. Yes, they're happy with that. Wonderful. So now that our CSS file is set up, you can start styling the page. So in the new CSS rule, target the H1 element and set its text align to center. So we say H1. Then we open with our curly brackets and we say text align colon center. And close that with a semicolon. Control and enter to check. And there we go. We can see our text has gone over to the center of the page here. Wunderbar. Step number 9. Now you'll add some elements that you will eventually style into color markers. Inside the body, add a div element and set its attribute to container. Make sure it is below H1. Okay. Div. And we're going to say class equals container. And then we need to close the div as well. I'm going to close the div on the next line because I'm going to put some stuff inside that later. Container. Have I spelled container wrong? Oh, I've spelled class wrong. I've written C-L-A-S instead of C-L-A-S-S. Once I have that, Control and Enter to confirm, and on to the next challenge. Within the div, add another div element and give it the class of marker. So we're going inside the div, and here we're going to have another div, and we're going to call this one class equals marker. And let's close off that div as well, making sure I haven't made any spelling mistakes this time. Wonderful. On to number 11. It's time to add some color to the page. Remember, one-way tag colors use a color keyword like black, cyan, or yellow. Create a new CSS rule that targets the class marker and set its background color to red. Dot marker. Remember, we use dot to target classes. Dot marker, background color, red. Like that. Now that's interesting. So far, nothing has showed up for us over here. We have no red color. Why is that? Notice your marker doesn't seem to have any color. The background color was applied, but the div element is empty. It has no width or height. In your dot marker rule, set the width to 200 and the height to 25. Okay, width 200 px, height 25 px. And now that we have width and height, you can see that the red line has appeared here. Your marker would look better if it was centered on the page. An easy way to do that is with the margin. In the last project, we set the margin elements of top and left. The margin shorthand should make it easy to manipulate multiple margin areas at the same time. Center your margin, set its margin property to auto. This sets top, right, bottom, and left all to auto. So we're just saying margin, auto, doing. And there we go. It's being centered on the page now. Now you've got one marker centered with color. It's time to add the other markers. In the container div, add 2 more divs and give them both the class of marker. So I'm not going to write it all again. I'm just going to grab my code, paste, and paste. And now we have 3 markers, but it just looks like one big fat one. There's no space between them. Let's see what's going on. Step number 15. When you have 3 separate marker div elements, they look like one big rectangle. Should add some space to them. When the shorthand margin property has 2 values, sets margin top and margin bottom to be the first value and margin left and right to be the second one. In your marker CSS rule, set the margin property to 10px auto. So 10px auto. Now that's given me, for the top and bottom, there's 10 pixels. and left and right is auto. So when we do margin, the first one is top and bottom, the second one is left and right. In school, you might have learned that red, yellow, and blue are primary colors, and learned how to create new colors by mixing those. However, this is an outdated model. These days, there are two main color models: the additive RGB, red, green, and blue, which maybe you will see in a television or on your cell phone. They're used by electronic devices. And the subtractive CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, used in print. In this project, we are going to be using RGB because we're going to be displaying our web page on a screen. First, add the class 1 to the first marker element. Class equals marker, and I think I can do this by putting a comma and 1. So marker, class equals marker 1. No, first marker should have div classes of marker and 1. Okay, marker. Do I have to write it again? Class equals 1, like this. Add the class 1 to the first marker div element. Okay. All right, let's see how we can add the class here. Maybe I can just say like this, 1. No, that's not done it. Class equals marker, comma, 1. No, that's not going to do it. Class equals marker and 1. No. Very interesting. So we've run into something where I've forgotten how to add multiple classes to different containers. So I can go up here to my W3 schools where we checked out the doc type declaration before. And I'm going to click on home, and we're going to search add multiple classes HTML. The class attribute. So add classes to HTML. Okay, so maybe we can see this. Okay, so that's using JavaScript. So we're not looking for JavaScript right now. We'll search again, see if we can find it. HTML classes. The class attribute. Okay. So all of these have one class. Class equals city. But how do we add a second class? Class equals city. Multiple classes. Okay. Oh, yes. It's so simple. Here, h2 class equals city space main. So we just put a space in there. So I have marker, and then I have 1. And now if I check my code, yes. So you can see when you forget things, it's very easy to just go and find them out quickly. As long as you know what you need to do, you should have no problem. Number 17, remove the background color property and its value from the marker CSS rule. So we're going to get rid of the background color here. Now all our markers have disappeared again. Create a new CSS rule that targets 1 and set its background color to red. 1. Background color red. So there we go. Now we have the first one back. The other two are still there, but they have no color at the moment. Number 19. Add the 2 to the second marker and 3. Now that I just did it a minute ago, it's going to be much quicker. Space 2 and space 3. So now we have every marker is called marker, Every marker has the class of marker, but they have different numbered classes as well. Okay. And on step number 20, add a CSS rule that creates the class 2 and set its background color to green, and then target 3 and set it to blue. Okay. Dot 2 background color green, and then dot 3 background color blue. So now we have a red marker, a green marker, and a blue marker as well. Perfect. Step number 21. Earlier you learned that the RGB color model is additive. This means colors begin as black and change as different levels of red, green, and blue are introduced. An easy way to see this is with the CSS RGB function. Create a new CSS rule that targets the container and set its background color to black with RGB 000. So we're going to go for the container. Inside the container, we're going to again use background-color. But instead of typing name of color, we're going to write RGB 0, 0, 0. And that gives us a black background. Now watch what happens if I set this to be 255. Now my background color is green. And if I add the last one, 255 as well, it becomes cyan. If I reduce the green back down to 0, now it's just blue. If I add the red, and we'll bring the red up to 20, don't see much of a difference with only 20. Let's bring it up to 100. And now I get a kind of rich purple color. So what we're doing here is we're changing the value. How much red, how much blue, and how much green. How much red, how much green, and how much blue to make a color. They want us to set it to black. So we have 0 red, 0 green, and 0 blue. Now, step number 22. A function is a piece of code that can take an input and perform a specific action. The RGB function takes values for red, green, and blue to make a color. Every red, green, and blue value is a number from 0 to 255. 0 means there's 0% of red of that color and is black. 255 means it has 100% of that color. In dot 1, replace the key function red with the RGB function. For the RGB function, set the value of red to 255. So we get rid of the name of our color here and we put in instead RGB, open our brackets, 255. Now I want my green to be 0 and I want my blue to be 0. Nothing will change on our page because this means the same thing as red. Notice that the background color of your marker is still red. This is because you have the red value set to 255. Now use the RGB function to set the other colors. So for 2, we're going to make the green. So we go RGB, open our brackets, 0, 255, 0. That gives us our green. And then the last one for blue, we're going to do RGB brackets 0, 0, 255. And that gives us our blue color there now. While the red and blue markers look the same, the green one is much lighter than it was before because the green color keyword is actually a darker shade. It's about halfway between black and the maximum value for green. So instead of using 255 for green, we're going to set it to 127. And 127, yeah, that's much nicer green. If you go back to 255, it's too bright. It's like a highlighter. No good. So 127 is much better. Step number 25. Add a little more vertical space between your markers and the edge of the container they're in. So inside the container, we're going to add some padding to 10px. Left and right padding to 0. So container padding. Top and bottom, we want to be 10px. And then left and right, we want to be 0px. So that gives us some more space between the top and the bottom markers. Number 26. In the additive RGB color model, primary colors are colors when combined create pure white. For this to happen, every color needs to be at its highest intensity. Before you combine colors, set your green marker back to be pure green. Okay, 2, 5, 5. Now it is a pure green again. Set green backs to the max value of 255. Step number 27. Now that you have the primary RGB colors, it's time to combine them. For the RGB function in dot container, set the red, green, and blue to the max of 255. So 255 for red gives us all red. Now I'm going to add the green, 255. That brings us to yellow, super bright yellow. Now if I add the blue, 255, I am back to white. If the red, the green, the blue, if they are all at 255, that means it is white. Step number 28. Secondary colors are the colors you get when you combine primary colors. You might have noticed some secondary colors in the last step as you change the red, green, and blue values. Yeah, we saw some yellow, right? Create the first secondary color yellow. Update the RGB function in the .1 CSS to combine pure red and pure green. So here's my red, and now this is my green. If I set that to 255, my first marker will become yellow. Create the next secondary color. Upgrade the RGB function in .2 to be green and blue. So we have green, and now here's blue, 255. And that gives us our cyan color that we've seen before. And for the final secondary color, magenta, we're going to use red and blue. So I'm going to set my red to 255 and my blue to 255. Okay, there we go. So now we have yellow, blue, and magenta. Now that you're familiar with secondary colors, you'll learn how to create tertiary colors. Tertiary colors are created by combining primary with a nearby secondary color. To create the tertiary color orange, update the RGB function in the one CSS. Red is at the max value, and green is set to 127. So that's how we make some orange, all full red and half of the green. Notice that to create orange, you had to increase the intensity of red and decrease the intensity of green. It's because orange is a combination of red and yellow, so it falls between the two colors. To create the tertiary color spring green, combine cyan with green. So for this, we want to set blue to be 127. And now we get a nice minty spring green color. Step number 33. To add the tertiary color violet, combine magenta with blue. So we are going to have blue full at 255 and red, it's going to go down to 127, and we get a nice violet purple color now as well. Step number 34. There are 3 more tertiary colors: Chartreuse green, which is green and yellow, blue and cyan, which is azure, and red and magenta, which will give us rose. To create these, upgrade the RGB function in 1. So red is 127. Okay, 127, and this one is 255. That gives us our Chartreuse green. For 2, we're going to set this to 127 and this to 255. And that gives us our Azure. That's a very nice color. And the last one, red goes to 255 and blue is going to go to 127, which gives us the rose color. Now that you've gone through all the primary, secondary, and tertiary colors on a color wheel, it'll be easy to understand other color theory concepts and how they impact design. First, in rules 1, 2, and 3, adjust the values back so that the background color is set to pure black. Remember that the RGB function uses the additive color model. So they start at black and go up towards white. So we're going to set everything back to be black. Going back to black. Now, all of my markers are black. Color wheel is circle, where similar colors are near each other and different ones are further apart. Pure red is between rose and orange. Two colors that are opposite from each other on the color wheel are called complementary colors. If two complementary colors are combined, they will make gray. When they are placed side by side, these colors produce strong contrast and appear brighter. In the RGB function 1, set the red value to max to make pure red. In the RGB function for 2, set the values of green and blue to 255 to make cyan. Okay, so we're going to get a pure red here, 255 on the red. And here we're going to make cyan, so 255. And finally another 255. And yes, you can see we have a strong contrast between these two colors. Notice that the red and cyan colors are very bright next to each other. This contrast can be distracting if it's overused. Yeah, it can be too much, right? It can make the text hard to read if it's placed on a complementary colored background. It's better to choose one color as the dominant color and use its complementary color as an accent to bring attention to certain content on the page. First, in the H1 rule, use the RGB function to set its background color to cyan. Okay, background dash color RGB. Now, do you guys remember how to make cyan? 0, 255, 255. It's going to give us the cyan color there behind our H1. Next, in 1, use the RGB function to set the background color to black, and 2, set the background color to red. Okay, so we're going to set this 0. We're going to set this to 0. This goes to 0 here. And we're going to make this red by going 255. Okay. Notice how your eyes are drawn to the red color in the center. When designing a site, you can use this effect to draw attention to important headings, buttons, or links. There are other important color combinations outside of complementary colors, but you will learn those a bit later. Now change dot 2 to set the background color to be black again. So we go back to black one more time. And in the H1, remove background color so it will go back to its default of white. Great. So now we're back to having just 3 black bars on a white background. Step number 41. Now it's time to add other details to the markers, starting with the first one. In the first marker div, change the class 1 to red. Red. Okay, so instead of having a class of 1, now we have the class of red. And change .1 in your CSS to .red. Okay, that's done as well. Update the RGB function .red so the red value is at the max, 255. Now my RGB value is at the max. Step number 44, change class 2 to green and 3 to blue. Okay, so this is going to be green and this is going to be blue. You'll notice they disappear. That's because we changed their class name. We need to go back to the CSS and change the name here as well. So instead of 2, we have green, and instead of 3, we have blue. (46) A common way to apply color to an element in CSS is using hex values. While hex values sound complicated, they're just another way of writing RGB. Hex color starts with hashtag, and they take 6 characters from 0 to 9 and A to F. First pair of characters are red, the second pair are green, and the third pair are blue. For example, hashtag 4B5320. In the dot green, set the background color to a hex value 00FF00. Okay, so this is dot green, and we're not going to use RGB, so I get rid of that. Instead, we're going to use hashtag 00FF00. And you can see that gives us the same green color. One thing to understand about these hex values, it's kind of a way of counting. The lowest number is 00. The lowest number is 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then A, B, C, D, E, and F. So it's a way of counting, but instead of only having 10 numbers, you have 16 numbers. So you have more control over that. And by combining them into 2-digit pairs, we can go to count the full RGB values of 255, right? I'll get rid of that code for now from my CSS or that explanation. And on to 47. You might be familiar with, they're actually going to explain it here now. So we're familiar with decimal, base 10 values going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. But base 16 values go from 0 to 9, and then instead of 10, they have A, B, C, D, E, and F. So the hex color is 00 is 0%, and FF is 100%. So 00FF00 is 0% red, 100% green, and 0% blue. Same as RGB 02550. Lower the intensity of green by setting the value of the hex color to 7F. So we're going to bring the green down to 7F, which makes it much darker and much nicer to look at. Step number 48. A HSL color model, which covers hue, saturation, and lightness, is another way we can define colors in HTML or in CSS. HSL function takes 3 values. The first one is from 0 to 360. That is the hue. The second one is from 0 to 100. That is the saturation. And the third one is from 0 to 100 for the lightness. The hue is a wheel with 360 degrees. At 0, it starts with red. It goes down into green at 120 and blue at 240. Saturation is how full that color is. At 0%, it will be gray. At 100%, it will be pure color. So, for example, if we had a HSL value of 0, 100, that will give us pure red. We can try it down here. HSL, open our brackets, 0, 100, 50. There you can see it gives us pure red there. But we're not going to do that yet. The last one is the lightness. That is percentage from 0 to 100. At 0, it's going to be basically black. And at 100, it's going to be basically white. For .blue, we're going to give the HSL function to make it blue. We're going to set it to 240, and then the saturation is going to be 100, and the lightness is going to be 50. So here inside my .blue for the background color, HSL, I'm going to set it to 240, comma, 100, comma, 50. Now I need to give it the percentage for the second two. I don't need to, but that's what they're asking me to do, so I'll make sure I get that done. So now you can see I have my red, green, and my blue one there. Boom. Done. Now, for step number 49. You've learned a few ways to set flat colors in CSS. But you can also use color transitions or gradients. A gradient is when one color slowly changes into another color. We can do that using the linear gradient function, which lets us control the direction and what colors are used. One thing to remember with linear gradient, it actually creates an image. It's usually paired with the background property, which can accept an image as a value. So instead of using background color, we're going to use background. So in the .red CSS rule, change background color to be background. So I'm going to get rid of -color here. So now it just says background, Control and Enter, and on to the next one. Step 50. Linear gradient function is very flexible. Here's the basic syntax you will use. Syntax means order. So first of all, you're going to put in the direction, which will be a degree from 0 to 360. Then your first color, then your second color. Gradient direction is the direction. Color 1 and 2 are color arguments where you can put colors into the transition itself. It can be any type of color. You can use RGB, you can use hex values, you can use HSL. We're going to add a red to green gradient along a 90-degree line to the first marker. First, in .red, set background property to linear gradient and give it 90 degrees as the gradient direction. Okay. So, .red, our background is going to be linear-gradient. Open my brackets. We're going to set it to 90 DEG, comma. Okay, I think that's all it wants right now is just the direction. So we want it to be 90 degrees. Now we need to use an RGB function to pass colors to the linear gradient function. So we're going to set it to pure red. So comma, after 90 degrees, we need a comma. And we're going to say RGB 255, comma, O, comma, O. And then that is going to be our first color, pure red. We can't see anything yet because the linear gradient function has not been completed. We're still missing the last argument, which is another color. And we're going to set that to be green. So after the bracket for the red color, I'm going to put in RGB 0, comma, 255, comma, 0. And now we should start to see it populate, but I've made a mistake there. That should be a comma, not a period. And there we go. We can see our marker going from red and changing to green slowly across that line there. That's called a gradient. My gosh, that is super ugly though. Okay, so on to the next one, step number 53. As you can see, the gradient produced a smooth red-green gradient. Linear gradient needs a minimum of 2 colors. It can use many, many more. So we can add a third color to it here. And we're going to add pure blue. So again, we do RGB, open our brackets, 0 for red, 0 for green, and for blue, we're going to add 255. So now we have a 3-color gradient. It's moving from red, green, and then to blue. Indeed, we could add some more colors there as well. We could go back to green again with RGB brackets 0, 255, 0. And then we could go back to red and finish back where we started by passing it another argument. So I could do RGB 255, 0, 0. So now it goes red, green, blue, green, red. But we don't want those right now. We just want the first 3. So I'm going to go back like that. So it goes red, green, blue. Color stops allow you to fine tune where the colors are placed along the gradient. They're like a length, or you can use pixels or percentages. For example, in this red-black gradient, the transition from red to black takes place at 90% along the line. So red takes up most of the space. Add 75% color stop after the first red argument. So here's our red, and we're going to change that to be 75%. So now red is taking up 3/4 of the marker. Now you know the basics of linear gradient and color stops. You can use them to make the markers look more realistic. We're going to set the direction to not be 90, but to be 180 degrees. That's going to make it a horizontal line. Step number 56. Set the color stop for red to 0%. Okay, so red is going to be at 0%. The color stop for green at 50%, and the color stop for blue is going to be 100%. Okay, so now we have 3 even colors. And on to number 57. Now that the color stops are set, you can apply different shades of red to every color argument in the linear gradient function. Shades on top of the bottom will be dark, and the one in the middle will be light, as if there's a light above it. For the first color argument, which is currently pure red, update the RGB function so the value for red is 122, green is 74, and blue is 14. Okay, so 122, 74, and finally 14. That gives us a brown color. Let me see if I've done that right. 74, 14. Yes, I think it's kind of a dark brown color. Check our code. Good. On to the next one. The second color argument. We're going to set red to 245. 245. Green is going to be 62. And finally, blue is going to be 113. Okay. That's giving us kind of a pinky color. And finally, the third color, we're going to set the red to be 162. Green is going to be 27. And blue is going to be 27 as well. There we go. So we have kind of like a shadow on the top. And then it gets a bit brighter, and then it starts to get darker again towards the bottom. Red marker looks much more realistic. Now we're going to do the same using the green marker. In green CSS rule, change background color to be background. Yeah, we don't want it to be background color because gradient is making an image. So we need it to be background. In this marker, we're going to use hex colors instead of using RGB colors. So we're going to set up our linear gradient function. We're going to set it to 180 degrees, and we're going to use a hex color code, 55680D. Okay. Linear dash gradient. First argument is our direction, which is 180 degrees, comma. And our first color is going to be hashtag 5568 0 D, giving us a nice dark green there. For the second color, we're going to use 71 F5 3E. So I put another comma in here for my second color, which is going to be 71 F5 3E. And I forgot to put my hashtag symbol there. We need to put that. Okay, so we get a nice bright green there. It's looking better, but the bottom of the green marker needs to be darker to make it look 3D. In the same linear gradient function, add a hex code color with the values 11, 6C, 31 for the third color. Okay, get my hashtag in there. 11, 6C, 31. That's going to give us the shadow on the bottom. So now my two markers on top look like they're 3D, like they're popping off the page. They look a bit more real. Even without the color stops, you might have noticed colors transition at the same points as in the red marker. The first color is at 0, the second is in the middle, 50, and the third is at 100. It automatically spreads them out evenly. In the red one, remove the 3 color stops because they're not necessary, and it's going to make our code easier to read. So let's get rid of the 0%, the 50%, and let's get rid of the 100%. We don't need it. It's already done for us by default, so it's not necessary. Okay. Number 65. If no gradient direction argument is provided, it will automatically use the 180-degree line. So let's remove the gradient direction argument. So we don't need 180 degrees, and we don't need it here either. We only need it if we're using different directions. Now, you'll apply a gradient to the blue marker using HSL as the color arguments. In the blue CSS, change the background color to just say background. Done. 67. We're going to use a linear gradient function, and we're going to pass it HSL function with 186, 76, 16. Okay. So let's get rid of all of this so far. All right, background. Linear dash gradient. We're going to go 186, comma, 76%, comma, 16%. Okay, so that's our first color, and you can see nothing has appeared so far because the gradient needs at least 2 colors. So it says we have a problem. Linear gradient. Oh, yes. So I started my linear gradient function, but then I need to have HSL function like this, and I need to close out the brackets. So now it should be okay. There we go. So we have the right code. As a second color argument, make a HSL function with the values 223, 90, and 60. So we put a comma so we can put in our second argument, HSL 223, comma, 90%, comma, 60%. That gives us our second color. And next we're going to get our third color, which is going to be HSL 240, comma, 56%, comma, 42%. Now we have a little shadow under the blue marker as well. Great. Now that markers have the correct color, it's time to build the marker sleeve. Start with the red marker. Inside the red marker div, create a new div and give it the name sleeve. So we start div class equals sleeve for your sleeve. Then we're going to close that div as well. Remember to close your elements once you open them. We're back to HTML code now on step 70. So we need to use new CSS rule targeting sleeve. Sleeve is a class, so we're going to type dot sleeve. and then open up our curly brackets. We're going to set the width to 110 and the height to 25. Width 110 px, semicolon, height to be 25 px, semicolon. Checking our code, bada bing, bada boom. Right now we can't see anything up here because we have no color or any properties added to the sleeve yet. We're going to set its background color to be white. Oh, excuse me. White. Oh, now there we go. So we've seen that our red marker has gotten quite a bit shorter. Opacity describes how opaque or non-transparent something is. A solid wall is opaque. No light can pass through it, but a glass is transparent. You can see through it to the other side. With the CSS opacity property, you can control how opaque or transparent an element is. With 0, the element will be completely see-through. With 1, it will be completely opaque. Inside CSS, set the opacity to 0.5. Opacity, we're going to set that to 0.5, semicolon. Now we can kind of half see through the sleeve, kind of like a bathroom window. Another way to set the opacity for an element is with an alpha channel. Similar to opacity, the alpha channel controls how transparent or opaque a color is. You set the sleeve's opacity with a named color and the opacity property, but you can add an alpha channel to the other CSS color properties. Inside sleeve, get rid of opacity. Okay, so we're going to say bye-bye opacity. It was nice to know you. Okay, and now instead we're going to be using RGBA. Now RGBA is similar to RGB, but it has a fourth argument. That argument is called alpha, the alpha channel. So it works like opacity. So instead of using white as our background color, instead we're going to use RGBA. Open our brackets. We want to make it to be white with 50%. So to get it to be white, we're going to add 255, comma, 255, comma, 255. And then we want an alpha value, which is going to be 50%. There we go. So we've turned 2 lines of code into 1 line of code. That's easier to read. That's easier to write. Much, much better. Your sleeve is looking good. It would look better if it was on the right side of the marker. One way to do that is to add another element, push it to the right. Add a new div with the class cap before the sleeve. Okay. Div class equals cap. And then let's close that div. Okay. That div is here on the left-hand side right now, but you can't see it. Create a new CSS rule targeting cap. In the new rule, set the width to 60 and the height to 25. No problem. So we go dot cap width with 60 px, height 25 px. Okay. Now my next one has completely disappeared. What's happened? Your sleeve disappeared. Don't worry, it's still there. What happened is that div took up the entire width of the marker and is pushing the sleeve down to the next line. It's because the default display property for div is block. So when 2 block elements are next to each other, they stack like blocks. Position 2 div elements on same line, set their display properties to inline-block. Create a new rule to target cap and sleeve. So dot cap, comma, dot sleeve. And we're going to set the display. And the display is going to be inline-block. There we go. So now our sleeve has appeared just in front, just towards the end of the marker. The last project, you played around with borders and the border color property. Every HTML element can have borders. They're usually set to none by default. With CSS, you can control every aspect of an element's border and set the border on all sides or just one side at a time. For a border to be visible, you need it to have width and style. In .sleeve, add a border left width with the value of 10 pixels. Okay, so in .sleeve, we say border dash left dash width, and we're going to set that to be 10px. And enter. Great. Borders have several styles to choose from. You can make a border a solid line, or you can use dashed or dotted. If you prefer, solid border lines are the most common. .sleeve, add a border left style and set it to solid. Okay. Border left style solid. Now we can see our border has appeared as a thick black line. Your border should be visible now. If no color is set, black is used by default, but to make your code more readable, it's better to set the border color explicitly. In the sleeve CSS rule, add a border left color and set it to black. Border left color. We're going to set that to be black. Great. So now we have our black line there as well. It was black by default, but they want you to set it so that maybe later someone else is working on your code and they're like, oh, how do I change the color of the border? And if it's here already in the CSS, that's going to make it much easier for them to change it. Number 82. Border left shorthand property lets you set left's border width, style, and color all at the same time. So right now we have 3 different lines just for border. Oh, man, that's very difficult, right? So let's get rid of that. Instead, let's say border dash left, colon, and we're going to add the width, style, and color. So first of all is the width, 10px, comma. Then we're going to add the style, solid, comma, and then the color, black, semicolon. Uh-oh. We have an issue, so it should be 10px, solid, black. Oh, we don't want to put the commas there. I'm sorry. Okay. Solid and black. Now, there we go. Now it should be working. Great. 83. Marker is looking really good, but to make it more realistic, you can change the border style to double solid borders. For the border left, change from solid to double. U-B-L-E. There we go. So now we have 2 lines instead of just 1 line. 84. The black color of your border looks very harsh against the transparent sleeve. You can use an alpha channel to lower the opacity of the black border. For border left, use an RGBA function, set the color to pure black with 75%. So here, instead of writing black, we're going to write RGBA, open our brackets because it's a function, it's pure black. So it's 0, 0, 0, and then we want to add 75% opacity. That makes it look more like a gray or a lighter black. That's because the red transparency, with the transparency, the red is coming through a little bit. Awesome, your red marker looks good. Now you need to add the caps and sleeves to your other markers. So we're going to just take these 2 divs here, cap and sleeve, add it inside the green, add it inside the blue, and look at that, just like that, my 3 markers now all have sleeves. Last thing you'll do is add a slight shadow to each marker to make them look more realistic. Here, we're going to use the box shadow property. The box shadow takes 3 arguments: the offset X, which is horizontally, how far away is the shadow; offset Y, which means vertically, up and down; and then color, which is a color. In .red, add a box shadow property with the value 5px for offset X, 5px for offset Y, and red for color. Okay, so we're going to say box dash shadow. We're going to say 5px space 5px and then red. Okay, so now you can see we have a very ugly red, solid red shadow under the marker. Wow, that is incredibly ugly. Number 87, as you can see, you added a simple red shadow around your marker. 5 to the right, 5 down. But what if you wanted it to be on the opposite side? You can use that, do that using negative values. So instead of saying 5, we can say -5, -5. And then it will move to the opposite side. It will be up and to the left. Notice that the edges of the shadow are very sharp. That's because there's an optional blur radius value for the box shadow property. If it isn't included, then it will be 0 by default. The higher the blur radius, the greater the blur effect is. In the green CSS rule, add a box shadow with the values 5, 5, 5, and green. Okay, box shadow, colon, 5px, 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 green. So now our shadow looks a little bit more blurry, a little bit more natural, right? So I could set that to a bigger number so we can see the effect. If I set it to 20, it becomes very soft shadow indeed. If I set it to 100, very, very light, almost impossible to see. So we'll leave it at 5px for now because that's what they want us to do. 5. Okay. 89. What if you wanted shadow to go further? You can do that with the spread radius value. So our box shadow gets even more complicated. First, changing the horizontal space, the Y space, the blurriness, then the spread radius, and then the color. So now we have 5 different arguments going into this one CSS line. Add a 5-pixel shadow directly around the blue marker. In the blue CSS rule, set a box shadow with the value 0, 0, 0, 5, and blue. Okay, so this is going to be a centered shadow. Box shadow 0px, 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 0, 0, 0, 5px, blue. There we go. So we have no blur, but you can see the shadow is going all of the way around the marker now. 90. Now that you're familiar with box shadow, you can finally finalize shadows, starting with the one for the red marker. So we're going to set the offset to 0, the radius to 20, the spread to 0, and the color to red. So our box shadow is going to look like this: 0px, 0px, 0, px, 0px, 20px, and the color is red. Well, that looks very ugly indeed. And we've definitely made a mistake. Okay. Sorry, my spread radius should be 0. But my blur should be 20. There we go. That looks much, much better. And that is the correct code. Let's do our green one. And we're going to do it using a RGBA color instead. Okay. Update the value of the color for the red marker. And instead of writing red, we're going to use RGBA. So we'll replace red with RGBA. That's a function. So we open our brackets. We're going to go 83, comma, 14, comma, 14, comma, 0.8. And that makes it a little bit more transparent, a little bit softer. Now, 92. Shadows for your green and blue marker will have same position, blur, and spread. The only difference will be the colors. In green and blue CSS rules, update the value for the shadow, offset, blur radius, spread radius, and leave the colors as green and blue for now. So our box shadow is going to be 0, 0, 0, 0, 20, 0, green. Is that correct? 20px, green. There we go. And same for the blue. We want 0, 0, 20, px, and 0, but it's blue. We haven't changed colors yet. 93. For the green, set the color to be 3B, 7E, 20, and CC for the alpha channel. Okay. So for the green marker's box shadow, replace the named color with a hex code. Hashtag 3B 7E 20CC. Okay, great. And now we're going to be using HSLA, which is similar to HSL, but it has an alpha channel. HSLA, open our brackets. And now our first HSL value is going to be 223, comma, and we want 59%, 31%, and finally 0.8 for the alpha channel. That gives us our transparent blue shadow. And we have finished. Wow, 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 wow. Now that was a very complicated project. After I upload the video, I'll get all the chapters set up for you guys, and I'll make sure that I copy the code to my code pen so you can see the full final thing. Till next time though, next we're going to be making this registration form here, which looks very interesting. I'm excited to see that. You can choose files and upload pictures and more functionality out of our websites. Anyway, guys, from me to you, to your mom, your dad, grandma, grandpa, cats and dogs, and your peanut butter sandwiches, very big thank you, everyone. And bye-bye.